Welcome, everybody. What a terrific show we have lined up for you tonight. Do not miss a minute of it. There's just going to be too much fun going on. Hey, I don't know if you watch us regularly, but one of the regular features of our show is something we call In Case You Missed It. It's about weird and often hilarious news stories that actually happened. Now, the truth is, it's getting harder to do that feature because the real news about the country and culture has gotten crazier than the bizarre stories that we find on these obscure news sites. I mean, this week in West Virginia, 5 students from Lincoln Middle School in Harrison County have been banned from participating in sports. For a middle schooler, being told you can't be part of the sports program is like being told you can't have hamburgers, candy, or Taylor Swift albums. So what did these students do that was so outrageous that it got them permanently tossed out of sports? Brace yourselves, for these young female scholars had the audacity to declare themselves to be authentically female, and they had the biological body parts to prove it. Now, they were all in a track program that was allowing a biological boy to compete against them in the girls' shot put event because despite his boy body, he claimed that he felt like a girl, and he wanted to compete against the girls. The girls at Lincoln Middle School were having none of it, and so they all refused to play along. They refused to play along with the lunacy of boys who weren't that good in an event with other boys, just up and pretending to be a girl so as to win at something. Or perhaps more accurate to say, so he could cheat at something. So these young girls proved that some 5th graders are smarter than a Supreme Court justice who claims she doesn't know what a woman is. But they were told they could no longer play the games of the track team because they wouldn't play the games of some brain-dead woke adults who are foolishly trying to destroy over 50 years of hard-fought battles for Title IX that gives female athletes some parity with their male counterparts. The Harrison County School Board in West Virginia, well, they need to resign in disgrace. And the school officials who decided and carried out the extracurricular execution of these young girls ought to be required to repeat middle school biology and then get promptly fired. And after that, they ought to get sued for discrimination, defamation, and quite frankly, for anything else that the lawyers can throw in there. I mean, why not? So, now, in other news this week, it was reported that Joe Biden is planning on bringing in Palestinians from Gaza and not only giving them asylum in the U.S., but offering them a fast track to citizenship. Now, the plan would be to give these Palestinians a quick and easy path to enter the U.S., but then provide housing assistance and other benefits. I'm thinking, hey, Joe, how about fast-tracking some housing benefits to homeless veterans who served this country? And have you ever asked, why would the Muslim countries close to them, why wouldn't they take them in? I mean, you got Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Yemen, and most of the Middle East. Every one of them refuses to allow any of them to come in. What do they know that Joe Biden doesn't know? Well, that's probably a self-answering question right there. Well, maybe it's because Palestinian children are taught from the ages of 4 or 5 that their highest achievement in life would be to kill Jews. And even other Muslim countries that are really trying to be civilized recognize how that mindset would lead to a culture that no sane society wants to embrace. And finally, all over the news this week are the ongoing riots at major universities across the nation, from UCLA all the way to Columbia. Some of the schools have canceled classes and even graduation ceremonies due to threats of violence and perpetual campus unrest. Jewish students have been targeted for hateful rhetoric as well as physical abuse. Since most of the protests are being staged in cities and states being run by leftists whose nutty policies let even violent offenders back on the streets within hours, even minutes of arrest, the lack of consequences means that these selfish brats learn nothing. I mean, if we had a real Department of Justice there would be federal charges filed against these hooligans for civil rights violations, and they could charge them for impeding an orderly government, whatever an orderly government would look like. We haven't seen one in decades. But the current DOJ is too busy targeting moms who show up at school board meetings, going after 80-year-old grandmothers who protested at an abortion center. So they don't have time to deal with people who violently disrupt and take over a university campus. You know, we usually close out our In Case You Missed It segment by saying, we read the news, so you don't have to. But when it comes to the real news, maybe we ought to say, we read the news because you don't want to, and you shouldn't have to. My first guest is one of America's most honored actors of both stage and screen. You've seen him from Forrest Gump to CSI New York. He's also the founder of the Gary Sinise Foundation, which does extraordinary work for America's veterans and its first responders. But there's another title he's most proud of. That's father of musician and veterans activist Max Sinise, who we lost to a rare form of cancer in January. It is such an honor to welcome back to the show one of the finest Americans I've ever known. Please welcome Gary Sinise. Okay, Gary, I've been doing this show 6.5 years. I've never gotten a welcome like that. No, I tell you, that is an affirmation of everything people know about what you have done for this country and the veterans. A very unselfish life you've lived, and we're honored to have you here. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Well, I know this has been a tough year for you and your family. And I kind of want to just dig right into it because it's a powerful message I think you have for all of us. Your son, Mac, who worked for the foundation, but is also a stellar musician, contracted a very rare form of cancer and passed away in January of this year. And I can't even begin to imagine just the grief and the pain of dealing with that over these past several months and years.
Yeah, it's been a tough fight. He was diagnosed in 2018 with this rare cancer called chordoma, which only affects about 300 people a year in the U.S. And quite often they can remove the initial tumor off the spine and it's cured. It goes away, but about 30% of the time it comes back, and he was one of those patients that it came back and started to spread. And there are no drugs really to fight it. There are, you just fight it with whatever drugs they try to throw at it. He did about 25 different drugs over a 5.5-year period, along with radiation, and he had several spine surgeries and all of that. And he fought it with just bravery and courage and resilience, and he smiled through it as much as he could. When he was feeling good, he was in a good place and a good spirit. And then toward the end of his life, he was a musician from the age of 9, exceptional drummer and a composer. He went to USC Music School and was a songwriter and composer. But the cancer fight took all his time, all his energy. So he had to put the music away. And then early last year, 2023, he said to me, "Dad, there's a piece of music that I never finished that I think I'd like to try to work on." And he teamed up with a buddy of his from college, who he hadn't seen for a while, but they were composer buddies, and they teamed up and they went to work to finish this piece of music that Mac had written. And they went into the studio this summer. They recorded it. They ended up recording Another piece of music, Mac couldn't play drums anymore because he was paralyzed from the chest down, but he picked up the harmonica. His mom suggested he get a harmonica. He started playing. And I told him to learn the song Shenandoah. Because a buddy of mine, a Medal of Honor recipient buddy of mine, tells a story about playing Shenandoah in the trenches of Vietnam. And so Mac learned Shenandoah, and when they went into the studio last summer, the orchestra backed him up with a great string arrangement. And all that can be seen at Mac Sinise YouTube. He did a final recording in November of this year, and he created this album that we put out, and he died about 2 months later after finishing this record.
It's a phenomenal collection of music, and one of the beautiful things, just before he passed away, he had a special idea of what would happen to the proceeds for this album. What did he want for that?
Mac never really thought that this record was going to be anything more than something personal for him. So he said to me, "Dad, what would you think if we made like 100 vinyls? And so I could give them out to people, and if we ever sold any, we'd give the proceeds to the Gary Sinise Foundation." So after he died, and I said, "Sure, you should do that, bud." And after he died, I ordered 500. And we posted a story on the foundation website about, Mac died on January 5th, and on February 27th, because of some people that had donated to help the Cordoma Foundation, which there's a Cordoma Foundation, and they've been very supportive of us. We started a campaign there, and a bunch of people had donated some funds there. So I felt it was important to let them know what had happened to Mac. And we put the album up for pre-sale, and within a day, there were 1,000 orders for the record. and so I had to call the pressing people and tell them, step it up, because we have a lot of orders. Now there's been hundreds of orders for the record. And as Mac wanted, all the proceeds for the album go to the Gary Sinise Foundation to help our veterans. So it's it's positive.
It is a wonderful album, and I hope that after tonight you're going to have to press thousands more, and that we just move it up the charts. And by the way, here's some good news for our studio audience. This is why you should have been here tonight. All the households in our studio audience will get a copy of this magnificent record, Resurrection and Revival by Mac Sinise. Stay where you are, because we've got a short break. We're going to be back and have more with Gary Sinise and his amazing career and the Gary Sinise Foundation, as well as the album, Resurrection and Revival by his son, Mac Sinise. But right now, Keith Bilbrey might give us a little clue what's coming up later in the show.
Well, still to come, Kansas Representative Ron Estes explains how he's fighting to keep tax cuts in your pocket. And later, country artist Stephanie Quill takes the stage with a stellar performance. All tonight on Huckabee. MikeHuckabee.com and sign up for his free newsletter, and follow @GovMikeHuckabee on X.
And welcome back. We are visiting with Gary Sinise. By the way, two of your daughters are out here, Sophie and Ella. We welcome you. We're glad to have you ladies with us tonight. We were talking about this incredible album and Mac's story, and it's such an inspirational story. You just can't get your arms around someone so young, so talented, so gifted, and so unselfish in serving others that he's not with us. But he is with us, and this album lets us continue his legacy. And I think that's an extraordinary thing, and I hope everyone watching the show will order their own copy of it, and you have to just go overtime to get enough to do. But this is also a big year. 30 years ago, a landmark movie came out, Oscar-winning movie, little thing called Forrest Gump. When you guys were doing that movie, Did you have any clue at all that it would become one of the most iconic stories of, I guess, really not just, it's not a war movie, but it's a human interest movie. Did you have any idea that it would be so well received by the public and become such an extraordinary hit?
Well, I knew I was working with Tom Hanks and Bob Zemeckis, great filmmaker, Bob, and Tom, great career, and the script was great and everything like that. But I was just happy to have a job at that time. So I wasn't thinking too much down the road. But here we are 30 years later. The movie still resonates with people. And
Yes, it does. It's timeless, and I think that's one of the reasons it's so good. The character you played, Lieutenant Dan, has now become the genesis of the Lieutenant Dan Band. You entertain troops all over the world. How many, 560 appearances you guys have done?
We just this past weekend, we were at Fort Bliss, Texas, and then we went to Fort Huachuca in Arizona, and then Luke Air Force Base. So I think that was, Luke Air Force Base was our 567th show for the military in all those films.
Bob Hope didn't do as many shows for the military as the Lieutenant Dan Band has done, but all over the world, people have really come to know that Gary Sinise is the real deal when it comes to caring for veterans. And one of the things the foundation has done, you've made homes available to our veterans, and we've got some footage of the 91st home, 91 homes you guys have provided. So when people help the Gary Sinise Foundation, this is part of what they're doing.
The program we have at the Gary Sinise Foundation is called RISE, Restoring Independence, Supporting Empowerment. I started raising money to build specially adapted smart technology homes for our veterans back in 2010. I just started playing concerts that were fundraisers.
Yeah.
And I'd bring my band, I'd donate the band, we'd raise some money, and we would started building these homes. And then when I started the Gary Sinise Foundation in 2011, we created the RISE program. And since then, as you said, we just gave away our 91st smart technology home. And these are all mortgage. When I say smart technology, we put all kinds of gadgets in there to make it, if somebody's missing their arms and legs, they've got a traumatic brain injury, they're blind, paralysis, whatever, spinal cord injuries, they have special needs. And so we provide special things within the home to help make their life more independent and to make their family's life more independent, less time taking care of the veteran, where the veteran can take care of themselves. These are special things. We want to do everything we can to give back to the men and women who serve our country. And if you get injured, you need some help, we're going to be there for you.
A lot of people may not realize, but we're about to tell them, this is your great-grandfather.
That's Mac's great-grandfather.
Your grandfather.
My grandfather.
Mac's great-grandfather on the cover of the album. What is significant, your family has a long history of serving this country. And I think when I've told people, I said, Gary Sinise is not just a celebrity that has picked a cause that he doesn't really care about, but he does it. Genuinely, Gary Sinise cares about veterans. Why do you love this country so much, Gary? Because it's obvious that you do.
I do. The last time I was here, Mike, I was here to promote my book had just come out.
Yep.
And the book is called Grateful American. And I believe that, we're all very fortunate to live in this country. It's a great country. Like any country, of course, it has its flaws, and there's no country that has escaped that. But we have the freedom to do as we please, to pick and choose as we want, to apply ourselves the way we want. And we have that freedom because we have men and women that are willing to sacrifice for it. And many sacrifices have been made over the years. So, in fact, this is Grandpa Dan there. He served, this is from World War I. So I have veterans on my wife's side of the family, Vietnam veterans. So a lot of veterans in my family. It all starts there with me. And then so much of what I've been doing over the decades manifested itself into the creation of a military, veteran, and first responder support organization, the Gary Sinise Foundation.
Well, Gary, you love America, but I want to tell you something. America loves Gary Sinise as well, for good reason, for all that you do. God bless you. Our deepest thanks to Gary Sinise for all that he does, and especially for joining us here. I hope you'll go to Huckabee.tv. You'll get links to find where Gary and the Gary Sinise Foundation is, and also how to get a copy of this great album, Mac Sinise, Resurrection and Revival. All the proceeds benefit the Gary Sinise Foundation. So buying one of these albums means you will help build a home for one of our veterans. One more big hand for Gary Sinise. Keith, tell us what's coming up.
Well, he's taking a stand for American prosperity. Representative Ron Estes is next. Then get ready for an extreme crossbow performance with Anna Dangerous. That's still ahead on Huckabee.
You know, I think we're going to have the Lieutenant Dan Band come to the show sometime to play. But I'm not sure we'll ever have music anywhere as good as what we have every week with Trey Corley and the Music City Connection. Let's give them a big hand. They are the best. Well, my next guest is a proud fifth-generation Kansan who has represented the 4th District in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2017. Would you please give a big welcome to Congressman Ron Estes. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Before you went to Congress, you served as a state treasurer, so finance is sort of your thing.
Right.
You get to Congress and you look around and you think, these people don't know how to manage money.
They really don't. And yeah, that's an understatement for sure.
So a lot of us are frustrated. We see the just spending that just keeps going and going. President Biden says, well, we're going to have to raise taxes to keep up with this spending.
Yeah.
Why is that not the best idea?
Well, it's not the best idea. Let's just talk a little bit about the economy as it is. You know, the first quarter of this year, the economy started slowing down. We've seen just a 1.6% growth in the GDP, and that's after 3 straight months of inflation going up. In fact, going back the 3.5 years or 3.25 years since President Biden came into office, inflation's gone up 19.4%, and real income's gone down almost 4%.
So we're talking really with income down and inflation up, that's basically 23% lost money to every American household.
It's a net impact. In fact, for my Kansans that live in the state of Kansas, it's about $1,000 a month that they're having to spend for the same the clothes, the same food, the same gas, the same rent because of that inflation. And so now certainly not the time to take more money out of people's pockets, which is what President Biden and Secretary Yellen are talking about doing. Really what, you know, with the economy slowing, you know, it's a direct change from where we were just before COVID. I mean, we had the wages going up, we had unemployment low, we had low inflation, we had the economy going well, and people were happy. And then what we're seeing now, because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that were happening in 2017, we were able to help make people keep more money in their pocket. And what we saw was business economic growth took off. We saw a lot of growth out of that. Some of those provisions were set to expire. Some of them already have. There's more of them set to expire in 2025. President Biden said he's going to allow those taxes to go back up. For some people, it's as much as a 25% increase in their tax rate.
Wow.
Yeah, and just that hit on top of people. And so we're working now, the Republicans in the House of Representatives are focused on how do we keep that good economy growing, how do we keep money in people's pockets. So we've created some tax teams to go focus on different areas of the tax code to help make that good changes in policy moving forward. And I'm chairing what's called the Innovation Tax Team, where we're focusing on how do we use some of the great ideas that come out of Americans and continue those great products, the great new ideas, and come up with what may be the next growth driver for our economy. And Americans in general are really innovative. I mean, we've invented everything from air conditioners to zippers and so many things in between around that. And we want to incentivize, or at least have a tax code that doesn't hurt in that regard.
Yeah, well, when we tax productivity and then we basically reward irresponsibility, it's amazing. We get less responsibility and we get less innovation, because that's what happens. You're punishing the productivity of people that want to create something. And that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
President Biden has also talked about doing something pretty dramatic with the capital gains tax, which a lot of people, it kind of goes over their head. What does it mean? But in a nutshell, help me understand that he would say that even if you haven't sold, let's say a piece of property, you bought it for $100,000, somebody decides that it's worth $300,000 because you bought it 50 years ago. You would have to pay tax on what it might be worth, even if you haven't sold it?
That's right, which is just, it's a thought generally that we don't want people to invest and make good decisions and grow the economy is somehow tied up into their mindset of thinking through that. If you do not have the cash, you can't pay for maybe that perceived $200,000 increase in value. Where are you going to get the cash? You're going to sell the property in order to raise the money to pay the taxes, which means then you can't continue to grow. It can't help the economy, help more people have jobs. And we're firm believers that the government should tax as little as it can to provide those core functions, and we ought to make sure that people have as much money in their pockets.
Gosh, what a wonderful idea, Congressman. You know, and I think maybe some of it is, I look at some of the people in Congress and look at their backgrounds, they're academicians and others, and they've never signed the front of a paycheck. You know, so they've never run a business. They've never had to make payroll out of their back pocket. And I don't know how we fix that, but would it help if we had a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution where Congress had to do what the rest of us have to do?
It really would. You know, we 49 of the 50 states have a requirement that they balance the budget. Federal government is able to get away with, because we're been such a strong economy for decades, because we've been fiscally responsible. And some people are now putting that at risk because they're wanting to continue to spend, make sure the deficit's growing and the debt's growing. Our debt now is $34.6 trillion, which basically means the federal government every second is borrowing $100,000.
Every second?
Every second. And so we've got to turn that around. We need to make sure that we're prudent managers of the taxpayer money that comes into the federal government, make sure that we're addressing those issues, and make sure that we're trying to help the economy and help people keep more money in their pocket, take care of their families.
Well, it's great having you here, Congressman.
Well, thank you.
You want to keep up with all of Congressman Estes' news, including his fight against the debt and deficit. If you go to Huckabee.tv, we will link you to the Congressman and the things that he's doing for you, even if you don't live in his district. Keith Bilbrey, am I reading this right? I mean, are we moving from informative to maybe dangerous things coming up?
We sure are. Anna Dangerous performs a thrilling crossbow act when we come back. And later, radio host and founder of the Common Sense Club, Bill Spadea, joins Mike at the desk. You're watching Huckabee.
Our next performer's act is so dangerous, I might even let Trey host the show for the next 5 minutes. Her skills with crossbows, whips, and knife throwing won her the Golden Buzzer on America's Got Talent. She has thrilled and terrified audiences all over the world. From Las Vegas to major corporate events, she's known as the most intriguing danger act in the world. Prepare to duck as we welcome Anna Dangerous. Trey, I was going to volunteer you to do this,
Two.
but I don't think you were willing, and so we had to get someone else.
Oh, I would have done that.
You would have done it? Oh, come on up then, Keith. We'll get you.
I know. No,
We'll
I
pop
don't
another
wanna
balloon
steal
off of
anybody's thunder. You know.
Okay, we're going to watch. Here they go.
Anna, position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anna, counting. 3, 2, 1, fire.
Oh, let's hear it for Anna Dangerous. You put that thing down right now. Oh my gosh, this is phenomenal. Anna, this is awesome. Hey, if you want to see more of the astounding Anna Dangerous and a booker for your venue or event, just don't get in the way of the arrow. Go to Huckabee.tv. We want to connect you to this magnificent performer. Keith Billery, why don't you take a stab at telling us what's still to come?
Oh, I'm still out of breath from watching that. Up next, radio host Bill Spadea in Saving Blue States is next. Then don't miss an incredible performance by Stephanie Quayle right after that on Huckabee. Go to Huckabee.tv and get your very own made in the USA Huckabee mugs, t-shirts, and more.
My next guest rules the airwaves in the morning on New Jersey's 101.5. He's also the founder of something that I think is great. It's called the Common Sense Club, trying to save his blue state from left-wing lunacy. Please welcome talk show radio host Bill Spadea. Bill, great having you.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here.
It's great having you.
A little bit,
Yeah.
kind of a tough act to follow, I'm just going to say. I'm in the green room, and now I'm from Jersey.
Yeah.
So I realize I'm down south now. Things are different. But I walk in, and I'm standing next to a woman who is armed.
Yes.
Like, what is going on here? But I love it. That was amazing.
We're not going to make you put a balloon on your head.
Okay, is that all right?
Because you live in New Jersey already. I mean, you're already living dangerously.
Fair point.
So you talked about a poll that just came out recently that showed that half of the people in New Jersey would get out if they could and are making plans to get out. I mean, that's a stunning number. What's going on?
It's even worse than that for the past 5 years, we have the highest out-migration of any state in the country. 7 out of 10 moves are out of the state instead of in the state.
Wow.
It's awful. Taxes are too high, but everybody knows that. And, you know, and the reality is that when that becomes the only debate, the opposition candidates lose. And that's why the Democrats have had such a stranglehold for almost 30 years now. The real issue is that people are worried about their safety. We've got an illegal immigration problem in New Jersey that is, you know, and I've said this many times on the air. My wife, Jody, and I went down to the border, and you can't unsee what is happening at our southern border. But the reality is every state is a border state. So people don't feel safe in their communities. We've got bail reform. 82% of the perps that are picked up in New Jersey are let out the same day.
82%?
82%. It's outrageous. We have a governor that won't enforce federal detainer orders. So you'll get an illegal alien accused of a horrific crime, spun right out, won't hold them.
And recently, he has been insisting that if a child, an underage child, wants to have gender transition, that the school nor the doctors have to even tell the parents?
They literally, directive from the Attorney General, they are forbidden from telling the parents.
So if I'm a father...
Think about that for a minute.
I'm a father of a 12-year-old, and I'm not, but if I were, and my child is confused enough and says, you know, I want to change my gender, that can happen without my knowing it.
Exactly. And it happens. It is happening. You have grade school kids who woke up in the morning, Johnny, decided at the end of the school day they were Jenny. School can't tell the parents. Now, here's the good news. With the Common Sense Club, we now have 150,000 members across the state, fastest growing, largest grassroots organization in New Jersey, and we are focused on school board races. So in the past 2 years, we've helped more than 400 candidates get elected and flip seats locally.
That is great.
It's local, right? And I've said this, you know, a lot of people think that it's about that knight in shining armor coming in, saving the day. Who's the hero? A lot of people hoping that the 45th president becomes the 47th president. I am one of them.
Yeah.
Right? I want to see that, right? Of course. We want to see that. But we have to remember that what is important is what happens locally.
Yeah.
Regardless of who's in the White House or who's in the governor's office, your school board, your community, your mayor, your council, that's what matters. That's how we have started to take New Jersey back. It's one school district, one town at a time.
Why does New Jersey continue to vote for the left when they're getting just pummeled by these policies, whether it's the crime policies, the tax policies? Half the state want to, they want to get the heck out of there.
Right.
Why do they keep voting for the same people?
It's a great question. And here is the specific answer is they don't want to necessarily vote for the bad guys. What's happening is they're not voting. I'll just give you a quick story. So 2021, there were 2 races for governor in the country. One in Virginia, one in New Jersey. In Virginia, Glenn Youngkin beats the Democrats, becomes the new Republican governor. In Jersey, Phil Murphy locked us down. 10,000 seniors died during COVID. I mean, just a complete disaster. He wins re-election. Why? In Virginia, 6 in 10 voters turned out to vote. In New Jersey, 6 in 10 stayed home. That's the problem. And the reason? Because the Republican nominee was too weak and cowardly to take on the real issues. Wouldn't talk about immigration, sided with the Democrats, said, oh, sure, we got to give licenses to illegals. Decided to attack Donald Trump 3 weeks before the election. Now, I don't know how you do that as a Republican candidate for governor. So what happened is most people said, you know what? I'm going to move. I'm not going to vote. My mission is to say, guys, you're here for whether it's the short term, the long term. You know, I get calls on the radio live every single day. Most people say, look, Bill, I've got an exit plan. I'm getting out. I'm like, okay, well, when are you leaving? Well, when the kids graduate high school or college, or I'm like, okay, 5 years, 6 years, you're still living under this wretched government. Help me do something about it. And we're starting to see an increase in Republican registrations. We're starting to see an increase in independent voters turn to Republican. It's changing. It's changing.
You know, so grateful to have you here. If you want to understand, Bill Spadea is one of the most influential talk show hosts in America, and he's sticking right there in New Jersey, where it's not easy. But think about this. He's already got 150,000 people joining the Common Sense Club. I mean, that's phenomenal in itself. If you'd like to learn more about where Bill is going to be appearing and get some information on the Common Sense Club, which I wish we had them all over the country, go to Huckabee.tv. We will connect you.
That's our show for tonight, folks. Go to Huckabee.tv for more information on all of tonight's guests and to see an online exclusive performance by Stephanie Quayle. Join Huckabee next week for attorney Bud Cummins, founder of the Wounded Blue, Randy Sutton, illusionist Charles Bach, and more. Thanks for watching Huckabee.
If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I hope you will now. The button is just below this video, and there's a little bell next to it. If you click on those, YouTube will reluctantly start letting you know when we've got a new video uploaded.